Today's blog post is going to be a video blog, a vlog, if you will. I think it's an interesting change in form to dabble with. I seem to be incapable of looking at the actual camera, so I'm just going to look at my face reflected back at me as I speak. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about coffee. As someone who wrote a book about coffee and has drank it religiously since maybe the age of 23 or 4, I quit coffee about 2 months ago. And it was a uniquely difficult thing to do. I've quit alcohol, meat, dairy, non-organic food, all kinds of different things I've run every day for months at a time, and none of these have actually been that hard once you get used to them. Trying to quit coffee was really hard because it is a very addictive chemical, and I was ingesting a lot of it every day. Probably the equivalent of, I don't know, 3 to 5 cups. I would just make a really strong espresso-like brew in the morning and kind of sip it into the afternoon, occasionally until 4 or 5, which I shouldn't. And had learned that it can influence stress or anxiety, that it, it's simply expensive and time-consuming to do every day. It's a nice, comforting ritual, but is it really necessary? And I tried leaving it, and I started very slowly. And I'd read a few articles about the pros and cons of using coffee, and it's so assumed that it's a good thing in our society that people don't question it, and we revel in it. Often like alcohol or any other drug that has its upsides and its downsides. So I started weaning myself by cutting my morning coffee with decaf, and got to a point where it was maybe 60-40 decaf caffeinated, but I was never going to stop, let's be honest. That was going to be a hard day. I would have headaches, and it would be a real challenge. My cat wants to be in this video, so we're going to bring her in. And then one day I got really sick. I had like a stomach flu kind of thing and was feeling terrible. And I figured, well, I already feel terrible. Might as well add some fuel to the fire and just leave off coffee today. Right, Patas? Right. So that day I stopped drinking it. And, for that day and the next, it was a little tough, but I was taking some Tylenol anyway. And then, pretty quickly it was gone. It was out of my system. And it wasn't any harder to wake up in the morning. In fact, it might have even been easier. And I noticed that everywhere I went, I had this free hand that I'd never had before. I was always holding a coffee mug in the car, walking across the street, always juggling. And I don't have to juggle anymore because I'm not physically addicted to holding this, caffeine bean drink everywhere I went, all morning and day long. I'm not spilling it on my clothes. I'm not spilling it on important paperwork anymore. I'm not burning my tongue. I'm not spending 5 or 10 minutes every morning, doing this time-consuming ritual. So I love coffee, and I love the taste and the smell, and I've now started reintroducing occasional dribs or drabs of decaf or a little bit of caffeinated coffee here and there, with the goal of being able to enjoy it as a special treat, but not in any way being addicted to it like I was before. And I think it's, we don't like to think of ourselves as ever addicted to anything. But it is, I was addicted, and I think a lot of you listening are too. And I think it's a good willpower challenge and mental exercise, if nothing else, to just try to see if you can quitting an addiction. And coffee's a very harmless one to quit because it's not particularly bad for you when you're addicted to it, and it's totally fine for you when you're not. You're not going to have more than a couple days of withdrawal, I think, and it'll help your sleep and maybe some other facets. So maybe give it a try if you want. I'm back to a casual pleasure drinker of the occasional half cup here or there, but I'm going to stay in this routine for a while and see how it feels. So that's today's blog. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave me any comments. I'd love to hear about your adventures or struggles with coffee, and I will talk to you soon.